everyone. Pull up a chair and get comfy.
Oh, girl, have we got stories to tell you all. The Never Alone podcast is about to begin, and you don't want to miss a minute.
Hi, my name is Iris Fisher-Smith, and I'm here with my co-host, Karen Hirth Whitty. And Karen and I have been friends since she was 5 and I was 8. We have a long-term friendship, and we love it. We're really blessed that we're still, together and sharing and, just sharing memories and sharing things from life now. We're both now grandmothers. Mm-hmm. We've shared, graduations, our kids growing up. Now we're grandmothers. It's just a whole journey. Anyway, so I want to welcome you to our new podcast. This is our very first episode of Never Alone. It's called the Never Alone Podcast, and it's based on a book I wrote entitled Never Alone. And it's a story of history and the historical events that revolve around my own family's story. I created this podcast as an adaptation from the book. And the book talks about my own family stories, like I said, and how, it revolves around, major historical events. An example is my Russian grandmother, came through the Russian Bolshevik Revolution in 1918, came to this country. She went through a lot. It was the pogroms that were happening in Russia. She lost most of her family, and she came over here at the age of 18 by herself on a boat that wasn't a cruise ship, that's for sure. And so we talk about her story in the book, and I go into my father's side of the family, which was more Italian-oriented, and their story about how they immigrated here from Italy. And then we go into my story, and all these historical events, like, for example, my father grew up with Leonard Nimoy, was one of them. My mother unknowingly went to school with the Boston Strangler. So it's all things. But the reason we're doing the podcast is not only to talk about the book, but to talk about the importance of family and friendship and sticking together. And for Karen and I, it's with God at the center of our relationship. And we believe that it's what has binded us together personally. I open my heart in the book, and I want to do the same thing in the podcast with raw honesty and storytelling. I know that as I was growing up, one of the things that helped me the most was when I had other mentors talking with me and giving me ideas on, what life was like and how to get through things. If I hadn't had those mentors, I would not have learned what I've learned today. And so I believe that we go through things in life so that we can not only learn ourselves and grow and become stronger, but also so we can be there for others. I believe that we live in a world today that is so challenging, and there's so much separatism going on and isolationism, and what is so important to us and needs to be important to so many other people is this business of sticking together and helping each other, thinking about the next one. And I wholeheartedly believe that we don't get from taking, we get from giving. And friendship is incredibly important because it's not just about one person. It really should be about both. There's a verse in the Bible from Ecclesiastes that talks about two being better than one. For when one falls, the other one picks the other one up, and pity the man who's alone. And there's a reason it says that. When you're, today, in today's world, we have, everything is on computer. And one of the things that my mother said before she passed away is she said, you watch, that internet is going to be the ruination of this nation. And maybe that was a slight exaggeration, but what has happened is it really has caused a lot of division between people. Our country has never been so divided, and it's a shame. Our country is diverse, and I believe that we need to meet each other where we're at, because we all have different, walks of life that we're walking, all different journeys that we're taking. And, our country as a whole is a big melting pot made up of all kinds of different immigrants from everywhere. And so, we need to find commonality and just meet each other where we're at, is my thoughts. So anyway, Karen, you read the book, And so, what are your
Hmm.
thoughts? What were some of your takeaways from the book?
Well, to start with, when you wrote the book, I was thought I'd dive right in and figured I'd know everything, and I know so very little. Your childhood is a wonderful place to be. It's just such a small blip in time, but it really is such a profound time.
And I'll just
The way
interrupt
that
you
we grew
with
together.
this. Some of it would be familiar to you because you're in the book, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that was kind of interesting, but it was really great for me to watch, and I've had the same experience in my life having new other friendships that have grown and developed that have stayed for seasons and seasons, and some who have been there just for a particular season, and just listening. You have a couple of stories in particular that just really fascinate me about the women and people who have come alongside you. How you have lived and moved around this country was I forgot. Like I knew, but I don't think I realized how many times you moved and how many people you've met and how many people you've had the been blessed by or you've blessed them, and it's been really cool to watch and rally to read that. So much was familiar, but so much was new. I got a kick out of the history that's in it, and it was funny because I have read it and I'm listening to it again. So as I'm listening, I get, you start doing one part talks about one of our favorite candy stores and Ben Dinelli's, and I couldn't believe how many candies you listed. It's like, oh my gosh, like oh yeah, I remember that. So it was really wild. But
It's a lot of memory
no,
for people their age, a lot of
I
reminiscing.
know, and then to think that we're even at this age that we can reminisce that much, but it was really cool to read about the family history. Even as we will get going and talking, I cracked up. It's just the thought of picturing Cy at your door, waiting to knock and to meet you at your college, to take you out without asking you and just saying, "Hey, he's just going to show up." I'm like, that is one of
For
my
those
favorites.
people,
You
for
know,
those people who don't know who Cy is, tell them who Cy
oh,
is.
that's probably a good one. Yeah. Your husband Cy, your husband to be. There's a great story in there about how you meet, and there's just something really sweet about it. So
Yeah.
I I can go on and talking. So I'm looking forward to talking about the chapters as you go, because every time you and I talk, I come up with something new I want to ask you, or that I remember that I wanted to kind of like discuss with you too. Did I want to discuss it, or a question? I have questions. I have questions. So it's kind of funny.
Well, the
Yeah.
book is 400 pages, so there's a lot to look at and a lot to ask. It's also available on Audible. A lot of people have found that listening to it is really nice because they can listen in their car or they can just be cooking dinner or whatever. A lot of people these days don't like to read. So that's why the Audible is so important. The only thing they miss on the Audible is the 130 photos that are in there. For example,
Yeah.
my grandmother on the Italian side, when she was 16 back in the 1930s, she went through a teenage
Yeah.
rebellion, okay? And her
Yeah. That's
rebellion
okay.
was a fascination with Bonnie and Clyde way back then. So she started emulating them and she got into a little bit of trouble, but it was nipped
I
in
was
the
gonna say,
bud. Huh?
how did her parents feel about that? I always wanted to know. Did she ever talk about how her parents felt about that?
Well, they
Did
weren't
she get in
happy.
trouble with her?
I
Yeah,
mean,
I bet they weren't. Yeah.
they came to this country from Italy and they're
Yeah.
they're immigrants and they're trying to make a living and they're trying to raise children because she had a lot of siblings. And for some reason they
Yeah.
all were working hard and going to school, but for some reason she was drifting off. I think some of it had to do with the fact, and I talk about this in the book, she developed polio as a youngster during that big polio
Yeah.
epidemic back in the 1920s. And she ended up with a limp, she ended up with health issues. And that kind of parallels with what I went through. I didn't have polio, but I had that burst appendix, which affected me the rest of my life. And we both ended up limping. Isn't that interesting? You know?
Kind of
So,
crazy. Yep.
anyway, her parents were not happy, but she was really rebelling. And it ended up that she got involved with a man from Italy. And then she
Wow.
was only 16 at the time. He was about 27. We have found out
Oh,
later on that he actually was married with four children. And so it was like
geez.
Yeah, and so back then that was a big no-no, and everything was kept hush hush. And she was actually
I'm
put in a
sure.
reform school to have to have the baby, which was my father. So
Oh,
there's a whole
geez.
story behind
Wow.
that, and that's part of what's in the book. It talks about what he went through, and
Yeah.
all of that. But I grew up in a large family, and that's why I wrote the book. Originally, I wrote the book for my family. But as I went along and started showing it to people, it really caught on, and people were really, really enjoying the historical stuff that was in the book. And not only that, is some of the life lessons, that you can learn
Yeah.
from. I did face some life-threatening, health issues. And that was when in 1968 I had a burst appendix, and I actually died for a few moments. And
Yeah.
there was a prayer group praying for me, and I believe that that's the whole reason I lived. And
Hmm.
sometimes when I think when that happens, I think it's because we're not done yet, and God has a plan. That's what I think. But I have always found my comfort, no matter what I've been through in my life, through friends and family and this business of sticking together. Can you share some of your thoughts based on what we went through? I mean, how did we meet? Do you remember how we met?
Well, I was playing in the sandbox, and there wasn't really. Harris's lived way up the street, but you were new to. There was a new family in the neighborhood, and you walked right
Who
over,
are the
and
Who are the
we just
Harrises? Who are the Harrises?
oh gosh, Dana Harris. Remember they lived up the hill, the family that was
Okay,
way
so
up the hill at the top of.
for people that are
They were the
listening,
only
and
ones that had a little ways away. Oh, I'm sorry, I got you. So yeah, the
you have to
Harris family,
remember,
which I don't know,
people that are hold on, people that are
no,
listening
we
have
only called
no
the
clue.
Harrises.
Karen,
Oh, this is a learning curve for me.
people who are listening have no clue who the Harrises are. They were our neighbors up the
All
street.
right. Our neighbors up the street, the Harrises. So I'm going to start talking like I'm writing a book. All right. They had a little girl around me. She couldn't come down alone, and you lived 2 doors away, and you could walk over. And yeah, it just started naturally and immediately. It just was finally someone to play with in the neighborhood.
Right.
That's
And
funny.
so what happened after that? I mean, we just kept, hanging out, and when
We
we
just
went to
kept
school,
hanging out.
we were 3 years
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah, but the kids were cool, but I think as I got a little bit older, we had there was like a youth program that we could go to together, and I I,
That's
I
right.
mean, I have there's funny memories, just funny memories, So yeah, and
What I
we play
remember,
and we get in trouble out of each other's houses.
what I remember is the fact that we were 3 years apart didn't stop us.
Yeah.
Okay. We found
No. No.
commonalities in what we had in common. One of the things that we didn't
Yeah.
have in common was the same age and the same school, same class, anything like that. But so what happened
Yeah.
was, from
Yeah.
my perspective, from what I can remember, is we ended up being like sisters. And do you
Yeah.
remember
No, it
what
was
happened after
definitely.
that? Do you remember what happened after that when we decided we were sisters?
My mother probably. My mother was worried that people would think that she had a child with another man, I think.
My father,
Wasn't it? Your father. She's like,
which
you
was
gotta
so
stop
not
telling
true.
people that.
I know.
I know. That's
She
so
was like,
funny.
stop telling people that. Stop, because it sounds like I had an affair with your father. And we both looked at
I
each other because we were
know.
young. And we both looked
Like,
at each other
we
like,
didn't know what that was.
oh,
Yeah, that gross, I know.
it
That's
didn't
so
it didn't
funny.
occur to
Yeah,
us that that would happen, right?
I know. I mean, little girls, they do that. They pretend they're sisters and stuff like that too. So, yeah, it seemed normal to
Yeah,
me. I don't know.
we went a little too far with it
Yeah,
though.
we drove around together. Pardon?
We went a little too far because people started asking. They were like, "Well, how are you guys half sisters?" And I had to think about it, and I was like 11, right? And so I'm thinking about it, and I'm going, "Oh, I guess my father and her
Right.
mother."
I know, right? Yeah, that's not true. That's not. Oh, we might have gone off a tangent there a little bit, but yeah, that's pretty
Your
funny.
poor mother, your
No.
poor mother was like, and she's going to a church and she's all religious, and we're telling everybody she had an affair.
Yeah, really. Well, yeah, I have a sister you don't know about. There you go. Yeah, it's pretty.
Please excuse this brief interruption for a shameless commercial. Remember, you can get your own copy of Iris's book, Never Alone, at irisfsmith.com.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, yeah.
I know.
So it's
So
interesting. It is true when you're little. Age doesn't really matter. It's like that little piece in between, and then it goes away again.
yeah, yeah. But it's
Yeah,
interesting what children will do when they want to have this closeness. You and I found
yeah.
a bonding as sisters, and we really wanted to be sisters. It reminds me of that old Bewitched episode where there was. Do you remember? Did you ever watch Bewitched? You must have.
Yeah, I love the. Which episode was that? I don't remember.
It was an episode that was actually written by some kids in a high school, and
Yeah.
and in fact, I think it was Elizabeth Montgomery came on just before that episode aired, and she said this was written by a class, and they wanted to bring, out about the importance of friendship, and it doesn't matter if you're black or white. So in the
Oh,
episode,
neat.
you had a black girl, and you had her daughter Tabitha, who was very white, and they wanted to be sisters so bad
Mm.
that Tabitha twitched her
Right.
nose, and they ended up with polka dots. The girl that was black had white dots, and Tabitha had
Oh
white.
my gosh, that's
But they
funny.
wanted to be sisters so badly. And then,
Yeah.
by the end of the episode, they had to get her to turn it back because they decided, hey, you can still be sisters anyway. You don't have to, own each other's skin, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Well, that's
it was a
neat.
cute
Yeah.
episode. But the whole point
I
of
don't
that
remember.
episode
So,
But that whole point of that whole episode was to show the importance of friendship and the bonding and
yeah.
the sisterly
Yeah.
love. No matter who you come from, whether you're Indian or Asian, it doesn't matter. A friend is
Yeah.
a friend, right?
It's interesting as we're talking. Like, I wonder how many people really have friends out there that they've known like we have. I'm sure there's a lot, but I don't. I do know it's kind of a rare thing to have somebody that you're still in contact with when you were that little. That's not blood, you
Yeah,
know. So
and to
yeah,
share the
it would be
memories.
interesting to know. Yeah,
Yeah,
memories.
yeah,
Yeah. But the bond was tight enough that it can't, like you said, we go our ways for a little bit, and then just every time we talked, I remember you would always be laughing, going, we wouldn't stop talking. It's like yesterday. It's like we just don't miss a beat, which is super weird, but great. Yeah.
I mean, and today, if I call on you and say, I really need this, you're right there, and
Mm-hmm.
the same with me. You know.
No,
And
same.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
3,000 miles apart, but we're still, together in spirit for sure, We talk a lot
This
and
whole new, yeah, and that whole new thing. I mean, before it was just the phone, and or we have to go on the phone that had the cord, and then now we have the cell phones, and then we can text, and now we can actually still see each other, which is crazy because that's been really cool.
I know we've been on the journey with the phones. And
I
something else that I
phones. Well,
put in my book, something else that I put in my book, there's a lot of funny stories. My mother was very humorous. She was Russian
yes,
Yiddish, 100%. And she married an Italian, which blew my mind. I mean, I had such cultural, differences, but there was also commonalities. Anyway, I remember one time, remember way back then, they invented the long cord so you could walk around the house
oh
talking
yeah,
to your
thank you.
friends.
Yeah, we had it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you remember that story in my book?
yeah. I do remember that story. Your mother running
Oh,
with
my
the phone in
mother.
her hand.
Yeah.
Who ran with it?
My So let me just tell you, let me just refresh your memory on that one. My mother was on the telephone with her friend. My mother had a lot of friends also. And whenever she went through a really hard time, she had them to lean on, and they leaned on her and
Yeah.
she leaned on them. It just was, that's where I learned it, was from my mother. She was very, very social. Anyway, so here she is on the phone, which she was on the phone a lot because she was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And,
Yeah.
we would be out playing. Anyway, so my brother Alan, who was 2 years older than me, and he's all over the book. I have a lot of stories about him. She's on the
Yeah.
telephone, and he was misbehaving, and he was annoying her. And she goes, "Just a minute, Alan, I'm going to get you." And she's running with the cord, and the cord was so long. We finally get to the point where it ended, and she was like boomeranged
Yeah.
back for telephone, you know. And Alan was laughing his head
I
off.
know.
But that's
Yeah,
something that I
that's
talk
hysterical.
about. I know, but that's something I talk about in the book is the history of the telephone. I
Yep.
talk about the history of television and how that progressed over time and where it came from, where it started. There's a lot of exciting things in the book, you know.
Yeah, it's
So,
interesting for sure.
yeah. But you know, I wrote the book too, not just as a memoir because it's kind of an autobiography memoir, but I wrote it with the idea that it's like my love letter to the next generation to share with them and
Mm.
tell them, you know, what worked and what didn't. You know, how do you get through hard times? How did my grandmother come over here on, you know, all by herself, you know, from, you know, losing her fiance and through the Bolshevik
Yeah,
Revolution, her
amazing.
parents, family. How did she do it? Well, on the boat that she came over, she met two friends. And she was a Russian
Yeah.
Jew, and one of the friends was Armenian, and the other one was Polish. And they had nothing in
Amazing.
common, but what they had in common was that they needed each other. And what I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
was I actually got the book optioned as a television series. So we wrote 10 episodes from the first season, and the whole first season talks about my grandmother and her miraculous story and how she did it.
I know.
All through
Amazing.
history, all through history, how do people do it? They stick together and they help each other.
Yeah.
You know, and it
Yeah.
doesn't make things go away, but what it does is it lightens
Nope.
the load because we carry the load for each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So she was how old when she got here?
18.
18.
Mm.
So I was trying to remember too. So people will know that we grew up in Massachusetts and you were north, you know, slightly north of Boston. And I picture the Italian side was I couldn't remember if the Jewish side was in Chelsea or where
Chelsea,
the
yeah.
Italian
Chelsea,
side was.
yeah.
Everybody was Chelsea. All right.
Yeah. Well, my father's side of the family, the Italian side, was in the north end of Boston, the Italian north end.
All right.
And then for a
Funny.
little while,
Okay.
they lived in West Boston where he met Leonard Nimoy, and he grew up with Leonard Nimoy.
Yep.
The two of them were friends, and you know, Leonard stayed in touch with his cousins and stayed close to the family. Leonard Nimoy was a nice guy. My father loved him,
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah.
and it was interesting. They were
Yeah.
both
That's kind of
named
crazy.
Leonard. Yeah,
Leonard and Leonard. Leonard and
yeah.
Leonard. Yeah. That's
Isn't that
funny.
something?
But did both your grandparents live near each other?
Well,
Like, so when
we-
you did dinners, were they in the same area?
well, we were in
I couldn't
Revere,
remember.
Massachusetts at the time.
You
Okay,
grew up there.
so we were very near both of them. My Russian
Yeah.
grandmother lived right up the street from us at the time because she had moved
Yeah.
over to Revere from Chelsea, you know, after,
Yeah.
you know, my mother went on to get married and have children. And, but yeah,
Mhm.
they were in Chelsea all my mother's life. My mother graduated Chelsea High School, and her class was very close. My mother talked always about their reunions and how did they do it as they aged? They stuck together, all of them.
Mhm.
But yeah, to answer your
Yeah.
question, you know, my father's family always lived in the north end of Boston until they moved to Charlestown, Massachusetts, where they resided until my
Which is
grandmother
right
passed away.
beside the north end. Yeah. It's like you can walk a block. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So I grew up with this fantastic cultural blend, you know, and
Yeah.
nobody spoke English. When I went to school for the first time, I thought it was odd because nobody was either speaking Italian or Yiddish. And I didn't want to go
Yeah.
to school because I felt odd. I felt like out of place. And so I had to learn to
Funny.
coexist with Americans.
Yeah.
And then I met
Funny.
you
Funny.
when we moved to Sharon. Then I
Yeah.
met you, and you were very American.
Pretty very American. Yeah. Yeah. We weren't my grandparents, my great grandparents came over um, from Sweden, Ireland, and Germany, but you definitely had that closer. I didn't have that one generation away. That's really cool.
Yeah. hmm Yeah. It just was such
Yeah.
a blessing. And one of the things that I want to do in this podcast is share with people the importance, the vitality that you get from just blending together with other people. You know, you're not going to always
Yeah.
find that you have something in common with somebody, but you can find a commonality in terms of, being kind to one another, you know.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
said, in the culture we're living in today, it's so incredibly diverse. And that's why I created this book the way it is, because my book is also very diverse. It has
Yeah.
so much in it. I know that the producer that optioned this as a screenplay for television said, anybody that reads this could get something out of it no matter how old they are. Because the whole thing is
Yeah.
all about, history and how television was made, like I said, and the telephone. And I talk about Bonnie and Clyde way back in the 1930s. I talk about my father's relationship with Leonard Nimoy. I talk about the Korean War and how my father was a prisoner
Yeah.
of war, and how it was then
Yeah.
back in the night. But it was this
Crazy.
1950, I think it was. There was then Senator Kennedy, who was instrumental in his rescue, because he was a prisoner of war for like 6 months. And Senator Kennedy, he was a compassionate man. He came to my grandmother's house a number of times and sent her letters that he's looking for him, and he finally found him. And it was
Mm.
I think the reason he took such special interest in him is because they were both from Boston. You
Yeah,
know.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was neat. Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, the times just even hearing the writings about the wars and stuff. I mean, I know things are really crazy right now for us too, but it can feel very, very far away. So when you talk about it, it really brings it home.
Yeah.
Those stories. You forget. You forget.
And the other thing that I want to bring across to people in these podcasts that we do is to encourage people with hope and a future, because truly every single generation has trouble of its own. And
Yeah.
we have been blessed to have had some really nice, decades that we've lived through, where things were pretty quiet. I mean, we had some wars, rumors of wars, whatever, but we've never really had challenging times like this. However, my grandmothers did, because they lived through the Depression.
Yeah.
They lived through, like I said, the Bolshevik Revolution, which was huge, and the Holocaust, all these things. We did not know that, Karen, in our lifetime until now. Now we're
Yeah.
watching things erupt. And my concern is that people will really respect one another and really try to help one another instead of fighting and demanding their own way. Because when you start to say to somebody, look, it has to be my way, that right
Yeah.
there puts people on the defensive and say, well, what about me? What about my
And
feelings?
it's a lack of communication and understanding. It's just fundamentally to the core, I think we're so much alike, and it's just heart-wrenching. Um, yeah, it's a little wild to watch what's happening in the world right now, for sure.
Yeah.
I was talking to my mom about we were talking about the book, and we were talking about the timetable that it goes through, and it was really interesting. She talked about, which I would expect your parents would have had the same thing. She was saying how she felt really blessed to be raised, be a teen in the 50s. She felt like at that time they were just so sheltered, and it really was like the best time when you
And
think
it was
about it,
fun.
that they were
Yeah.
just, it was fun, and there was a air of feeling safe. It just, and as she's talking about it, you can just feel it. And your parents, yeah, they would have been around at the same time. So it's interesting that they got to experience that and then jump into, like you said, the other, well, we got Korean War before it, and then we go flip over to Vietnam War. But the in between part is, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know something?
Mm.
In every generation, like I said, has trouble of its own. However, there's always positives that take place. There's always new things happening, that is encouraging. You and I have grandchildren, and there's other people that have grandchildren. We are wanting the best
Mhm.
for them, you know.
Yeah.
And how does that happen? Well, we encourage them and we teach them about the past. We teach them about history. History is very important because I believe that we learn from history, right?
We do. And isn't it amazing how often we repeat it? So it's
That
amazing.
too,
But
yeah.
yeah,
If we don't learn
amazing.
from it, it repeats. Yeah. Yeah. And we kind of see
Repeat.
some of
And
that
you
now,
think,
don't we? You know?
yeah, totally. Yeah. But it is funny when you have grandbabies and you start thinking about things differently. Um, so I have to confess I never was really good about recycling. And then I had the grandkids, and it dawned on me, I'm going to leave this mess to my kids. And so now, I can't leave this to the babies. So now I'm recycling. Just the funny things you think of as you become grandparents. And, the world has evolved in such a way. I mean, obviously, when we were kids, we didn't have recycling. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's such a foreign thing. Yeah.
No, do you remember we used to see trash on the side of the road? We didn't need recycling.
I know.
People
I
just
know.
used to toss
Gosh,
stuff
people
out the window.
out the windows.
Karen,
I mean, it
can you
wasn't that
remember?
bad, but it wasn't illegal.
Can you remember driving in the car and you'd roll down the window if you had like a Coke in your hand or something, throw it out the window. And you had
Yeah,
trash.
we weren't allowed to litter. I
What's
wasn't
that?
allowed to litter, but we weren't allowed to litter. I do remember that, but we would throw it. But you remember seeing the kids do it all the time. Yeah, they were rotten, throwing our trash out. So funny.
Well, my parents
Yeah,
would be
people
in the
out there.
front seat. Yeah, my parents would be in the
Yeah.
front seat and they wouldn't see us do it. We would roll down it. And then my mother would catch a glimpse of it and she'd go, "Who threw that out the window?"
Yeah. Funny,
Um,
funny, funny. So
But anyway, we're going to close for now, and we hope that you've enjoyed this episode with us, this reminiscing. And, the next episode, we're going to continue to talk about my book. We're going to continue to talk about history and what we can learn from history and what we can learn from each other. So I hope you'll tune into our next episode. In the meantime, I wanted to let you know that if you're interested and you want to read about Never Alone, you can find it at irisfsmith.com. And if you go to my website, you'll be able to see home movies, all kinds of photos, reviews. We have a trailer about the book. We're talking about the episodic series that I have, and lots of stuff. And this journey that we're taking together with the podcasts, we hope will be fun, uplifting, and bring you hope and a future. So we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
yeah, I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, take care, and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Love you.
Wow, that was awesome, wasn't it?
I know those stories were really something.
Hey, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time when we share more stories from Iris's book, Never Alone.
Order your copy of Never Alone at irisfsmith.com today.